there's this reel, and I may post it now, that I saw that like somebody was like, when I asked her who won between Daniel and Goliath, and she said Daniel, he like walks away. It's like, yeah, bro, that's like basic, like
Yeah, it's like basic, basic stuff.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is another episode of the W Podcast, and I'm so excited because I have a special guest. Honestly, a family friend. She was Pauline's friends first, but now she's my friend too, and I'm so excited that Naz Jones is going to be joining us, and we're really going to be unpacking what is it like to date in your 30s. Because, hear me, dating in your 30s is different than dating in your 20s. I'm sure it's different than dating in your 40s. But also, there's still some principles that no matter how old you are, you'll definitely be able to get from this episode. But I'm so excited. We're going to be talking about things from how to determine if somebody's spiritually compatible with you. How do you know if you're dating somebody and it's not really working out, but you're like, I don't see nobody else working out. How do you really practically let that go? I'm excited because I know you're going to get a lot from this episode. So without further ado, let me invite her on. Naz, what's up, fam?
Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining. I forgot to mention, she's also the founder of the Swoon Diaries podcast, which is all about K-pop and K-drama. So we're going to talk about that at the end. If you're into that, I'm telling you, her podcast is like one of the best out there. So I need you to make sure you stay tuned for that. But Naz, thank you for joining. Like I mentioned earlier, you're a family friend. I think Pauline, you may have known her. Is it 10 years this year, or it's more than that?
Yeah, probably. Probably. I think more than that. Yeah,
I've known you
time.
I've known you for years now, which is crazy.
I know.
I remember I used to see you at school.
I know.
Like you were working.
Yes, when I was a TA.
Yeah. Those were the days. Simpler
times, man. It was great.
Well, thank you for joining. I kind of set it up in the beginning and talking about dating in your 30s. But before we get to that, kind of walk us through your journey so people can get to know you a little bit. What was your dating life like? And before you get to that, you can share who you are. But what was your dating life like as a kid and then moving into your 20s? Like, what was that progression like for you? Or has it been?
Yes. So again, I'm Nazarene, but you can call me Naz. So I have been a Christian since 2011. So I got saved during college. And ever since I was a little girl, like I literally remember like specifically 8 years old, I always dreamed about marriage. I dreamed about, like I can't wait till I'm in high school and I have a boyfriend. I grew up watching all these classic 90s sitcoms with all these high school experiences and things like that. So like I've always had a very kind of like hopeless romantic like mindset, even when I was a little girl. And I am now 33 and I have never been in a relationship. I've had like a lot of different situationships, like especially in my 20s, because I just didn't know what I was doing and how to navigate relationships. But for some reason, like that just has never happened for me. And like I used to be like really confused and really discouraged. Like, what is going on? Like, why is it so easy for everyone to be in a relationship, whether it was in high school, college, in their 20s, like, people having relationships left and right and one after the other. And I'm like, why is it like so hard for me? Like, I just need one guy, like just one. So yeah, that's been my journey. And I know it's really shocking to hear, like, as someone like in their 30s, like, you never had a boyfriend, like what? And it confuses me as well. But it's such an odd thing. And it's something like that's like really vulnerable because it's so easy to feel like something's wrong with you when you've never been in a relationship and you're like, in your mid 30s. But that's been my story. And I definitely wanted to share that though, because I know that there are other people like me out there and they just might not feel as comfortable like sharing that. But I have no shame because I know God's got me. So I'm like, so as long as it can help somebody else. But yeah, it's definitely a very unique experience for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I thank you for sharing that because like you said, I know for sure there's other people who are watching this who are in the same boat but would never have the courage to say it. So shout out to you for being able to do that. I'm curious because when people hear, well, you said it clearly, you never had a boyfriend, but you have dated people before, like
Mhm.
growing up in high school, and you said situationships. And
Yeah.
I think we all know that, but you never had somebody actually ask you like, "Hey, Naz, can you be my girlfriend?" That's what you mean.
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
And I think why some people may have a hard time saying that, if that's their case too, is because maybe sometimes it starts to get in your head of your own personal value.
Mhm.
You at any point coming up?
Oh, yeah, definitely, especially in my 20s because at that point, like, especially my mid-20s, people start getting engaged, and I'm just like, "What is going on?" Like, why hasn't this happened for me? Like, I mean, and then it kinda gets in your head, like, okay, like, I've been talking to this guy, and then, like, the next person he dates, he ends up marrying or
Mm.
whatever, and it's just kind of why didn't this work out the way that it should have? So it is very easy to kind of like go into that spiral, like, oh my gosh, like it's me, like I'm the problem, there's something wrong with me, like why can't this ever happen for me? So yeah, it's definitely very easy to kind of think that it's tied to your self-worth, and then confidence becomes an issue, and it definitely can be a problem for sure.
So that was real, what you just said about you date somebody that ends, and then the next person they date, they end up marrying, and how
Yeah.
crushing that can be. I'm sure there's somebody out there right now. They may be going through that. Like, how did you claw your way out? Because I can imagine, like, especially as you get older, you're like, bruh, like, especially if you weren't the one that ended the relationship. I can imagine it's
Right.
harder.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that I've held on to, that I still hold on to, is the fact that God's timing is best, and God knows exactly who I'm supposed to be with. So if he had a relationship end, it's for a reason, and he wants the best for me. And I think like in my life, I've just learned so much about God's faithfulness, and he's never let me down, like, ever. Like, every single thing that I've walked through, he's given me no reason to not trust him. So I know that if something ended and, the person ended up with somebody else, it was for a reason, and it's because they were supposed to be with that person and not me, and that ended because God allowed it to end. And it has nothing to do with, like, me as a person, but it takes a lot to, like, get to that point, definitely. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. But it's cool because I feel like if you allow yourself to get to that place as you get older, it's easier to have that perspective. Because
Yeah.
I'm curious, and there may be somebody who's experiencing this now, and maybe they've been in a relationship, maybe they've been in several, and it just hasn't worked out for whatever reason, and they still find themselves similar to you in their 30s, wondering when is it going to happen for me. Was there ever a point where it started getting hard? Because obviously, right now, you sound polished and
Yeah.
mature and great because you are. But I'm sure it wasn't. It's been a journey, and it wasn't all.
Mhm.
Was there ever a point where it was starting to get hard to trust God in general? Because
Yeah.
it's like, hey, this one area of my life, God, you said you would give me my heart's desires. Why is this not happening? I see so and so getting married, and I know they ain't really about living for you. Like, how did
Yes.
how did you get to the place where you are now, where it's like, I know I can trust God because I've seen Him be faithful everywhere else?
Mhm. I think it was definitely a journey because I think so I turned 25, and that was for some reason like the age that I was like, I'm going to be married at this age. So when I passed 25 and I get to 26, 27, 28, and I'm nearing 30, I think I was like around 28 when I was like, okay, so at this point I'm over it. Like, I if I'm gonna be single for the rest of my life, so be it. And I didn't even I stopped like consuming dating content. I stopped consuming content relating to like marriage or preparing for marriage, all that stuff. I was like, I don't care anymore. I'm done. I've reached my limit. If this is my calling that God has placed on me, then like so be it. Like I stopped praying about it.
Oh,
I
you
was
thought you
just
were gonna be a
tired.
nun?
Yeah, like literally, I was like, I'm tired. Like I'm done. And like in retrospect, that sounds so ridiculous because like 28, like why would you give up at 28? Like that doesn't make any sense. But at the time, I was just like so tired of like praying, and I was so tired of like seeing it happen. But like literally, it just feels like it's happening for everyone else except for you. So I think God challenged me in that season and being like, you're saying that like, oh, I'm content. I'm content with being single forever. But what you're really doing is you're kind of closing yourself off emotionally because you have a fear of being hurt, and like it's too painful to like continue to trust and believe for this. So you're choosing to convince yourself that you're gonna be content and being single forever, but you're just too scared to like truly believe. And that's something that God challenged me with. And I was like, you're right. You're right. That's exactly what I'm doing. So it forced me to press through and really learn what faith actually is, because faith really is like the substance of things hoped for and things that you can't see. And this is something that I can't see, like, and to be honest, it's something that like i I believe will happen in my heart because it's something that I desire in my heart, but I cannot see it. It's something that I honestly can't envision. But like that's where the faith jumps in, because I have to trust that God is going to provide something that I can't envision myself. um so yeah, it's always been a journey, but it's definitely been like a test in faith and like helping me strengthen my faith and know like what having faith for something really means, because you really just can't see it happening, but choosing to believe that it will.
Yeah. And I think that's relatable for everybody, whether it's been waiting for a relationship or waiting for a house or
Mhm.
waiting for a job. We've all had to
Mhm.
wait for something at some point, and learning how to wait well in one area typically can help you wait well in other areas. Because once you get
Yes.
married, that doesn't stop the waiting and learning how to wait
Yes.
well. Because then you may be waiting to have a baby, or you may be
Mhm.
waiting to pay off debt, or whatever it may be. So the sooner you can learn how to wait well, and I'm not saying it's easy, because we
Yeah.
own journeys uh, with waiting, but being able to wait and learn that, like, all right, the Bible says that He will renew my strength as I wait.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
I don't have to do this on my own. God can actually help
Yes.
me wait. Like, that is a game changer. So,
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree, especially when you said waiting well, because that's something I hung on to. Like from my late 20s, I read it in a book. It's called "It's Not Supposed to Be This Way" by Lisa Turkhurst,
mm,
and it's kind of a book about how to navigate seasons, like when life isn't going the way that you planned. And she talks a lot about waiting well, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and that's something that I've hung on to ever since then, because God wants us to rely on him and be strengthened by him and trust that we can be strengthened by him even in seasons when we don't know what's on the other side. So yeah, definitely something waiting well has been a huge thing for me.
yeah. So, obviously, you said you haven't been in a relationship, but you've been dating a little bit here and there in
Mhm.
your life. And
Mhm.
I kind of want to go there a little bit, because there's people out here as well who are dating. They in these streets, they in these DMs, they in these dating apps, they're all the things. So would love to just get your perspective on it, because it may help somebody else. And I'm curious, when you're dating somebody and you finally meet somebody that you actually like and that
Mhm.
you actually think is attractive,
Mhm.
maybe we should start here.
Yeah.
uh, as you get older, has it been harder for you to not lower your standards when it comes to maybe looks or employment or criminal history? I don't know,
Um to be honest, I think because I am in my 30s and I'm getting older, it's actually been the opposite. Like I'm actually very unwilling to compromise, and not saying like about like superficial things, but I like my rationale is that I've waited this long. So for me, it doesn't make sense for me to like settle in any way, and not things like, oh, like height or like what things like that, but like there are some things that like I'm willing to kind of go a little bit easier with, but like for the most part I'm just like, no, like if any sign of like any sort of red flag, I'm like, nope, next. Like,
Yeah,
because I've waited too long to
yeah.
settle for anything less than God's best. So
Like
that's kind of my rationale.
you're not settling for somebody that's not a grown man handling his business responsible. Like that's not
Right.
what you're looking for.
Right, exactly. Because like I think now I can fully acknowledge like when somebody is like a good man, like, so like I know like not to like pass a perfectly good person up. Like I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, like he's not 6 feet. Like that's I'm not there. But like, like, but there's like character things that I'm looking for that I'm like absolutely not willing to compromise on.
So this may be helpful, especially for somebody that may not be in their 30s yet, but they're still dating, and they may not have learned, what a good man looks like. Like,
Hmm.
from your perspective, what is that? Like, what are the characteristics when you're going out and assessing if you want to date somebody, that you're like, all right, this is a good man that I want to get to know a little bit more?
Yes. I think the first thing, just outwardly that I look for is somebody that has a servant's heart. So like I think something that's really important for me is like someone that is very like active in church. And you don't have to be there every day or anything like that, but I think it says a lot when you're willing to like volunteer and like give of your time and of your resources to like the local church. I think that's really important, and I feel like that's a great way to get to know someone that you're interested in as well. Um Also, like a man that treats people well, and not just like the girls that he thinks are cute or whatever, but just treats every woman, every person well. And someone that like shows fruits of the spirit. And I feel like those things are like very clear, like as you observe someone. So like those are kind of things I look for like off the bat. And then like, maybe once I like start talking to them or whatever, there's like other things I look for. It's like wisdom and like respect and like having boundaries and um having the same mindset when it comes to like purity and things like that. So, but those are things I look for like at first, like, in the at first outwardly.
Yeah, no, that's good. And just for those who may be listening and they're new to the faith, because we never want to assume everybody knows what we mean.
Yes.
So when she said fruits of the spirit, she wasn't talking about bananas and apples. That's love. They show love. They show they have joy. They show that they have peace.
Hmm.
Especially, this is one thing that's really big. They show that they have self control,
Yes.
because I heard something, and you know who Pastor Stephen is, but he shared
Hmm.
something one time that was really good about like you want to make sure that you're not dating somebody who doesn't have self control, because that's
Yeah.
something that low key is an underrated red flag. You don't hear that talked about a
Hmm.
lot, but when you're dating
Yep.
somebody who doesn't have self control, and that could be from anything, that could be anger, it could be food, it could be lust. Like that
Hmm.
is something that could be very dangerous, because that can lead not only to destruction with whatever they're having lack of self control with, but that could show up in the relationship. And now I'll get in
Exactly.
an argument and you wondering how you ended up Ike Turner, Tina, like it's just like
Yeah.
you it's real stuff. You got
Yep.
to be able to
Yep.
pay attention to those signs. Um, so for you, because one of the things we just talked about was obviously fruit of spirit. How do you
Yes.
go about determining if somebody's spiritually compatible with you? Because I know that faith is a big component for you, but I can imagine that's hard, because everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people have Christian in their bio, or they have a verse in their bio. Like, how do you know? Okay, and maybe it takes a few dates. Like, do
Yeah.
you have to know that you're compatible with somebody spiritually before you actually go out with them?
I think I would be willing to go out with somebody and then allowing that to determine like if they're able to like if they like have those fruits, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just have to get, just be able to talk one on one with somebody before you can really establish that. So yeah, I would definitely be willing to go on a date to like discover that. But I think like a lot comes out in the way like people talk and like the things that they share and how they express them, and like and as people talk you get to hear like their viewpoints on certain things and things like that, and like so like those are a lot of things that I take mental notes on, like, oh, they said this about that situation, or they said this about this person, and you're like, oh, that's concerning. So that's kind of like how I try to determine like where their heart is, in a way, like kind of like the type of person they are, just like the way they speak about situations themselves, or like even like other people. So yeah.
Yeah. So for you, because I want to get super practical, because I've had this
Yeah.
conversation with some single friends of mine, like some guys, and it's like, at what point do you bring up Jesus, or like try to really get deep into it? Is it just a matter of just having conversation naturally and letting it come up,
Mhm.
or do you
Mhm.
sit down? And I'm sure, I don't think that there may not be a right or wrong answer, but from your perspective, is it, hey, we sitting down, all right, tell me your salvation story? Like, how do you try to? Is it just literally just listening to what they say, or is it a little
Yeah.
bit deeper than that?
Yeah, I think I haven't had too much experience with this, but if I like I'll casually drop something like, "Oh, at church, like something something," or, "Oh, like I read this and something something," and try to see if they like catch the bait, basically, like see what their response to that is. And then if I'll determine if I like the response based on like what they say. It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of like drop like nuggets and then see if they like catch not the hint because it's not something they're necessarily supposed to like catch a hint on, but I'll like drop little nuggets and see like how they respond to like what I say. Like so if you say like, oh, like at church I learned this or whatever. Not that I wouldn't say it like that, and then they'll be like, oh, like, well, I don't go to church. It was like, well, okay, here's there's my answer. So like that would be like an example.
Okay, that's good because Christians get the bad rap of being cringy or making things weird, but I think
Yeah.
you're doing that just natural conversation. It's
Hmm.
cool, and it's interesting because there's this. I laughed when you said this because there's this reel, and I may post it now that I saw that like somebody was like when I asked her who won between Daniel and Goliath, and she said Daniel, and he like walks away. It's like, yeah, bro, that's like basic, like.
Yeah, it's like basic basic stuff.
Um, but like you said, just asking questions and just seeing how they respond. And maybe
Hmm.
sometimes, and you tell me, like if it's not something super serious, I'm
Yeah.
sure you may have to still have a few more conversations and see if that topic or if they respond in a similar way over and over.
Hmm.
Because sometimes
Yes.
you may hear something and we're human. We all say things we maybe shouldn't. Is
Right.
how you go about it too?
Yeah, like I think sometimes, like you said, like it's not all just one conversation. It's like one and done. Okay, I've gathered my research. I'm done. Sometimes it takes like multiple to really get a gauge on like how the person is. So like I wouldn't say to like okay, just talk to him once. Like I'm not feeling it. He didn't pass my test, but like I would give it, especially if it's a person that you don't know like too well. Like sometimes it just takes a few more tries, and sometimes people like they're nervous too and they like things come out wrong and things like that. So
Yeah.
sometimes I do think it's like it takes a couple conversations.
Now this wasn't in the notes, so if I throw you off, forgive me. But I'm curious. I just thought about this. Like you're dating, or not even dating. Before you get there, like you meet somebody. Clearly, there's interest because y'all start texting more, or maybe y'all
Yeah.
start DMing more. Like, how long do you like to go before you're like, all right, if they don't ask me out by this time, I got to kind of start assessing some new boundaries? Because I don't think you could. I don't think you
Yeah.
just out here texting guys all day. Just
Right.
in general, I feel like you may reserve that for guys who are showing interest and you think may be interested in you. So, like, how does somebody go about that? Because I could see it being easy to just be texting somebody forever,
Hmm.
you end up not getting anywhere, and you're like, that was a waste of my time.
Right. I think that especially if it's already been established that there's like an attraction and an interest and like numbers are exchanged, I honestly think within a week, like I maximum 2, but I really think within a week the guy should ask you out,
Yeah,
especially if the interest has already been established. I don't think it should take that long. As far as like what happens after that, then like that's that depends.
right.
Everyone's different. Everyone's story is different. But I think like if the interest has already been established, like definitely within like a week, like 10 days. But it shouldn't be like weeks and weeks of just mindless texting. It's just like what's
Yeah,
going on here? Because that's how you end up in a situationship and you've just been texting and calling this person for 6 months and y'all haven't been on a date and
yeah.
it's
No,
dumb. So yeah.
I agree with that. And do you feel like that's one of the biggest difference since you've been in your 30s from your 20s is you have that kind of mindset like, all right, you got a week, bruh.
Yes, no, absolutely. Because like I've just had my time wasted like so many times. So now I'm just like, I have very like strong boundaries when it comes to that. And of course, like things are case by case, but I really do think that men go after what they want with intention. So, the kind of back and forth and the confusion is just like, nope, we're not doing it. So yeah, I think like me now being older, like I have just no tolerance for for the
Yeah.
time wasting.
And I 100% agree with that. Have you heard of the term love bombing? Have you heard that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have.
How do you spot that? And for those who don't know love bombing, it's very easy, simple definition of it is especially you just meet somebody and then all of a sudden they like, baby, I want to marry you. I love you. Like, is it that simple of like, all right, you doing too fast? Or like, are there little nuances for you that you picked up that like are showing that this person may be doing some love bombing to me? I just met you, bro. Like,
Mhm.
how do you go about that when you're texting somebody?
I think that that's something that it's like I've experienced in the past, but I didn't know what it was until way after. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was being so manipulated and I didn't even realize what was going on because they're like telling you everything you want to hear. Like, oh my gosh, I like you so much. Like, da da da. Meanwhile, like, there's been no movement. Like, so there's no really action behind what he's saying, but he's like saying all the right things otherwise. And I think now I can identify, like, okay, if I think that someone's coming on way too hard too fast, like that's definitely a sign of love bombing. So I'm very like hyper aware of that now that I can identify it. But at the time, like when you're in it, it can be hard to figure out that's what it is.
Yeah. Now, for our younger audience who may be listening, let's help them out because I can see them being confused. Like, all right, we just met, and then you say in a week they should ask me out, but then you say they shouldn't come on too strong. Like, how do I determine? And I'm with you, but for the people, how do you? What is coming on too strong when you just meet
Yeah.
on that weak sense?
Yeah. I think that you kind of have to take yourself out of it and think logically, which is hard in the beginning because there's infatuation. Like when you really are really interested in somebody, you're so excited to be texting them and FaceTiming them. And so you get caught up in like, he's saying all the right things. This is amazing. But you kind of have to take yourself out of it and be like, okay, I've known him for a week. Is this might be a little bit too much? And just being willing to like being sober minded. I think that's a really important thing. That's something that I wasn't doing back then. Like I would just get so excited because, like I said, I'd never been in a relationship. So whenever like anyone came along, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so exciting. This could be it. And you forget that, like, oh my gosh, this is going too fast. It's going too fast, but also going nowhere at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's I think you literally have to just kind of take yourself out of it and be like, logically, does this make sense for the timeline that we're on right now?
Verbally, it's going too fast. So there's
Yes,
like
verbally,
they may
yes.
be saying stuff like, "Oh, I can't wait until we married," or he
Mhm.
was in the world, it might be, hey, I can't wait to wake up to breakfast with you or something like that.
Yes,
Like it's like,
yes.
like
You're
we
like, "Whoa," like, "I don't even know you like that."
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. What's your perspective on men who come to you now? They're upfront and they're
Mhm,
honest, and this may not be the first date yet with you. They may just be texting, or they may get your number and they may be like, "Hey, I want to be upfront, Nas.
mhm,
I'm dating some other woman right now. Not
mhm,
serious boyfriend girlfriend, but I am going out on dates." I heard somebody say last week. Our guest said openly dating. What
mhm,
as a woman when you hear that? Is that a red flag? Is that like cool? I'm doing that too. Like, how do
mhm.
you go about that?
I think that it wouldn't be necessarily be a red flag because I know that with online dating and stuff, people kind of they date multiple people. They're just trying to figure out what they like. For me personally, and I'm not saying this is not like a hard and fast rule. For me personally, that is not something I'd be comfortable with because I don't want to be competing against anybody else. We can pick this back up when I don't know you filter through the others, but I personally wouldn't want to be like added to like the dating pool of somebody else. I would appreciate his honesty, but I don't think it would be something that I would like willingly be a part of. It just I don't know, The Bachelor is coming to mind. So I'm just like, no, like
Like, how
no,
many
thank
other?
you.
Yeah, it's like how many other women is there really?
Right. It's like, oh, like, because I know for me, like, I would think too much about it, and I'd be like, okay, like, I need to make sure that like I'm the best one, like that he'll pick me, that like he'll. So I wouldn't want to be a part of that. I think it would just cause too much mental confusion for me. So I'd be like, I'm okay. Yeah. So
Yeah,
because I don't think that because I know especially when you're on dating apps and things like that, you like dating multiple people, talking to multiple people, like that's a thing because you're essentially talking to strangers. So like talking to a few people, like, that's fine. But even for that, for me, like I that's not something I could do, not because I think it's wrong or whatever, but like I can't multitask for anything, so that just wouldn't work for me personally.
yeah.
So yeah, just I think it just depends person to person.
But that's the cool thing about knowing yourself,
Hmm.
because if there's some people who are totally fine with that and
Yeah.
they're okay if somebody else does that, but I could see somebody not being fine with that, but because they just desperately want somebody in their phone, they say they're
Right.
fine with it, and then they end up
Hmm.
making themselves miserable going through that experience. Is that something that you think you've always had, or as you've gotten older, you've been able to more confidently be like, nah, dude, you come back when you're ready?
Yeah, I think it definitely comes with age because I think like younger me might have been like, okay, like I just need to make sure that I win. Like, but now I'm just like, no, it's okay. I don't
Yeah.
need to be a part of that. It's okay.
So I'm assuming you wouldn't do that. Like you wouldn't date multiple guys. Yeah.
No, because I don't think that I'd be able to give everyone the same amount of attention. And again, I can't multitask. Like everyone that knows me knows this. I can't multitask even in just with normal tasks, let alone people. So it would just be a lot for me. I know it works for a lot of people, and I think it's a good way to get to know multiple people. And then as you get to know people, you can be honest with everybody and be like, okay, actually, I think we should end here, whatever. As long as the communication is clear, like do what works for you, but I don't think that would work for me personally.
And I love the perspective of you saying that because I feel like sometimes in Christianity it can be people try to be so black and white, like
Mhm.
either a sin if you are openly dating people as a Christian, or something's wrong with you being too spiritual if you are.
Yeah,
And it's just like
yeah,
no, either that's something you're comfortable with or you're not, and it doesn't always have to
right.
be so spiritualized if it's something that ain't spiritual. Uh,
Exactly, exactly, and it doesn't have to be like, it's not even like a matter of right or wrong, it's just kind of like what works for you and, like, what makes you feel comfortable, and is it good for your mental health to know that, there's other it just depends on what works for you.
yeah. So as somebody who's in their 30s, single, looking to mingle, what are your thoughts? And well, let me start here. Are you sick of is the narrative about how women pursue men? Is
Mhm.
that just annoying or do you feel like it's oversaturated? And then two, like how do you go about that whole context of women should pursue a man? Oh no, women should put themselves out there. Or no,
Yeah,
I feel like I could see it being confusing, low key, as a woman. You tell me what
yeah.
that has been like for you.
Yes, I think that all of it is really annoying. All the messaging for for women, like a lot of the messaging going towards women and as it pertains to dating. I think because of course I've been safe for a long time, so I've heard a lot of it over the years, and it just can get overwhelming because I know for me, you kind of feel like there's just so much that I feel like is given to us as women, and I feel like men don't get as much messaging as we do. So it's always like, you need to look like this, you need to do this, you can put yourself out there, but don't be too aggressive because men don't value what they don't pursue. So make sure you don't come on too strong, but also you need to put yourself out there. So it's just like it can be a lot. And then at a certain point, I just kind of shut down on all of it. I'm like, I can't take in this stuff anymore.
It's
It's too
almost
much.
paralyzing. It seems like.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much information, and then you get into the whole like, oh, you're masculine, and then you're feminine. It's just it just can be so much. So yeah, but I think because, I'm at the age I am now, I'm just like, okay, you kind of take what, replies to you and then just kind of like toss away the rest so it doesn't get super irritating. But yeah, the messaging can get very contradictory, but I think it's the volume of it that just gets to me. And there's a lot of single women out there that, younger than me, that kind of feel like, okay, well, I have to do this in order to get a man, and I have to do this, and I have to do this to prepare. And it's just like, sometimes it's also just fine to lean on the Lord and wait and just trust him and allow him to mold you into who you're supposed to be, and not feel like you have to do like, you know, X, Y, and Z to be prepared and be ready for a man so a man can choose you. It can be a lot. You just
Yeah.
have to kind of filter through a lot of things.
No, I love what you said about allowing God to shape and mold you and not a spouse because that's what we're supposed to be doing in general. Everybody
Yes.
is supposed to be
Yes.
allowing God to lead us and guide us. And like you said, it's not even that the messaging in and of itself, if it was just one person
Mhm.
that it is wrong or bad or that some of it
Mhm.
isn't actually helpful.
Yeah.
But and maybe this is helpful for somebody that feels how you just said. And they're like, I feel overwhelmed. I've been trying everything I can. Maybe you should step back for a month,
Yeah.
and maybe you
Mhm.
get off the dating app for a month.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
there been a time, and you talked about it where you had to step away, years ago when you were in an unhealthy place when you were 25. But like recently now, are there moments where you would say in a healthy way you have a boundary with dating? It's like, all right, I'm just gonna step back for a little bit. I feel like I may have gotten a little too ramped up in whatever it may be. Like, is that something that's kind of you think is helpful as you date?
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep track of how you're feeling as it pertains to dating and like why you're doing things. I know for me, even recently, um, I got back on a dating app and just I had to ask myself, why did you get back on here? Did you get back on here because you're lonely? Did you get back on here because you're at that place again where you're like, well, what else am I supposed to do? So I think it just, I don't know, it just takes a lot of like being willing to do the inner work and like really search yourself and ask yourself the hard questions as to why you're doing the things that you're doing. I know for me, dating apps just don't work out for me. But then, every now and then I go back because I'm like, well, what else am I supposed to do? Um, but I have to remind myself that I I don't know. I know what I've heard, and I trust God, and not that if you're on a dating app you don't trust God. I think this is my unique story, my journey. Just knowing that like what my unhealthy patterns and my unhealthy triggers are, and I know that like if I'm like running to a dating app, and when I know that I'm not supposed to necessarily be on it at that time, I know that I'm not like in the best place, and I know like okay, you need to take a step back because the motive for doing this was not correct. So yeah, it just takes a lot of just inner work and just like being willing to like be honest with yourself.
You just that was. I hope y'all got that. Like that was so good, but it's so hard, and I
Mhm.
for sharing that because it's hard to work on yourself. It's hard to ask yourself. Sometimes you don't even know to ask yourself that question. Like, why am I on
Mhm.
here? Like, I think
Yeah.
it's such a sober-minded question to ask
Yeah.
yourself. Like, why am I doing this? Why did I accept to go out with the third guy this week? Like,
Mhm.
whatever it may be. Like, why is it that I don't put myself out there more? Like,
Yep.
it's not just one spectrum where you have
Mhm.
that. It could be you're not doing anything. Why is that?
Yeah.
Is it because you're in a healthy
Exactly.
place, or is it because you're
Exactly.
not? And I think
Mhm.
having the courage to sit down with yourself and do that inner work is helpful. Is there anything that you've done, and maybe counseling and maybe a book, like you mentioned earlier, like that
Mhm.
you've done to help you with that inner work? Because there may be somebody watching who's like, I want to do it, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah. There's so many things that have helped me like kind of do that inner heart work to like get myself in a healthy place, especially as it pertains to like dating, and just like getting older, like in my life in general. So I read a book called The 7 Myths of Singleness, which was so good because I it helped me to unlearn a lot of the unhealthy things we're told as singles in general, but especially as single women, because I feel like when you're a single woman, especially if you're single for a long time, you kind of get this messaging, okay, we gotta fix that. We gotta get you somebody, like, like your life isn't going to be completely sorted until you're married. So it helped me like unlearn a lot of those healthy patterns. So I didn't feel as if my life was on hold because I wasn't married yet. So it was very, 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 very helpful. And another book that really helped me too was The Sacred Search. Because it really puts into perspective the weight of marriage, and like this is not it's not a game, and how the right person is essential to its success. And like kind of it forces you to kind of look inwardly and ask yourself why you even want to get married in the first place. So that those two books were definitely very, very transformative as far as like my mindset regarding like singleness and marriage and all those things. And it just like helped me like I guess realize that like God's hand is in all of it, and it's not something that we should take lightly. And there's joy in singleness, but there's also joy in wanting to be married as well. But like unlearning those healthy things unlearning those like unhealthy mindsets as it pertains to both of those seasons of life.
That is, I love what you just said, and I'm paraphrasing, but the right person is essential to the
Mhm.
success of
Mhm.
marriage.
Mhm.
Because there's a reason why 50% of marriages, unfortunately, end up in divorce, whether it's the church
Yeah.
or the world context.
Mhm.
And I think there is something that has to be said about picking right. You
Yes.
know, obviously you get married, and whether you pick right or wrong, you should, unless it's like abusive or something like that, you
Yeah.
do your best to try to stick it out. But if you could pick right, and
Yep.
avoid the unnecessary work, because every marriage requires work. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not ready to work, please don't get married.
Yeah.
Please
For
just
sure.
don't waste your time. Like, this is kind of off topic, but like, you hear people who say like, I don't want to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I'm like, that's kind of selfish. Like, that you don't want to have kids just because you want to be selfish. But then
Mm-hmm.
another way, and maybe even more, I respect it, because like,
Mm-hmm.
you know yourself so well, you don't want to subject somebody to a parent who isn't willing to do the work. And
Right.
same can be said for a relationship. If you know you're somebody that's not going to put in the work to have a healthy,
Mm-hmm.
don't get married, because you're just going to make
Right.
somebody else suffer. And then if you do have
Exactly.
kids, you're going to make even more people suffer. And I think
Exactly.
one of the ways you can know if you're ready to get into a relationship is if you are ready to do that self work, if you are
Mm-hmm.
ready to do that inner healing, because then you're on the path to actually being and doing what it takes to have a healthy marriage. Because a healthy marriage requires you to look at yourself, because
Yeah.
you'll look at it and be like, why did I just blow up at my spouse?
Yep.
Exactly what you said, Naz, about you having to ask yourself, like, why did I get on a dating app? Like, you should be doing that in a relationship. Like, why
Mm.
did I blow up at my spouse? Why did I say this to my kids? Why did I get this for my spouse? Why did I buy her this? Like, you asking yourself these questions can help you have a better relationship. And honestly, that can start right where you are, whether you're single or in dating. Because I like to say, yes, everyone says that marriage is a mirror, but I believe that dating is like a camera phone, because you put it
Mm.
out and you can see yourself, but then you have the option to put it away, because you don't got
Mm-hmm.
to sleep in the same bed with them. So like, you can have an argument and then you don't really got to resolve it that night, because they're across town living in their place and you're at your place, and you can watch your show and you don't have the awkward tension in the house. Whereas when you're married, you're gonna have to deal with that, because if you don't deal with that, you're gonna feel it. Whereas
Yeah.
you don't really feel it, except when it's in your face and you're holding that camera phone. You ever open up your phone and you don't realize it's on the front facing camera? You're like,
Yeah.
oh my god,
Like, whoa.
why did somebody tell me I walked out the house looking like this? And I think sometimes dating is like that, and it could probably shock people if they're
Yep.
prepared, because dating should be fun, yes, but at the same time, especially when you talked about that weight, Naz, of marriage,
Mm-hmm.
the weight of it, there should be a lot of intentionality that goes into it, and that
Yeah.
can scare people as well in the dating phase. So
Absolutely. That was
definitely
good,
want to take.
Tim.
Yeah, you
That was
just
really
had me
good.
like go
No,
off,
that
but
was good.
yeah, I think it's so important to do the inner work. And if you're not willing to do the inner work, it's not okay, but at least be like, all right, I know I don't need to date nobody right now. I know I don't need to, because the saying hurt people is true. If
So
you're not,
true.
and no one's perfect, please, we're not saying that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I still have work. I'm married. There's plenty of work I got to do. So that's not the point. But the point is, if you're not willing to at least try to be the best version of yourself, don't try to make somebody else come and have to deal with that, because that's just not, because you don't want to do that. The Bible tells
Right.
us like treat others how we want to be treated, but we don't really do that, because we would never want somebody who's toxic unless you like toxic. That's a whole separate
It's a whole other
podcast.
thing.
But you don't want somebody who's toxic to come into your life to date you.
Yep.
So why do that for somebody else? So Naz, I would love, unless there's something else that you want to share dating related, I would love for you to share a little bit about your podcast, where people can
Mm-hmm.
find it, because there's somebody listening. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I love Naz. Like, I want to be her friend." Like, where can they get more of you?
Oh yes. So I do have a podcast called The Swoon Diaries. It was born in 2022. I fell in love with K-dramas during the pandemic. And I've been watching ever since. So me and my friend started a podcast. I now do it on my own, but it's called The Swoon Diaries. It's so much fun. So yeah, that's what the podcast is called. It's wherever you listen to podcasts. And then also I'm on Instagram at Swoon Diaries Pod. I have a lot of fun over there. And but also my personal page is at Nazarene Bianca on Instagram if you want to follow me. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. And I really hope that me sharing about this help somebody, because I don't know, when I discovered the term late bloomer, it really blessed me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm in my 30s, but I've never been in a relationship, and I know there has to be other people out there like that too. But I just hope, anyone out there that's been waiting for a long time, that they're encouraged and knowing that, like, you're not the only one. There's nothing wrong with you, and God's got all of us. So, yeah.
Amen. And that's why we do this, because we just want to provide perspective to help people have a healthy relationship. And that starts, obviously, even when you're single. So thank you for coming on, sharing your story. If you like K-pop, if you like K-dramas, or if you just like Naz, make sure you go subscribe to the Swoon Diaries podcast, follow her on Instagram, and we'll see y'all next week on the W Podcast. Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.